Joining us now is a social commentator, Ayodele Adio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. About 13.2 million out-of-school children. And one wonders what really has happened to all of the initiatives that we came up with to ensure inclusiveness when it comes to education over time.
Well, apparently, I think Nigeria has been unable to answer the fundamental question about whether education in itself is an investment for us or it's a cost. If it's an investment, then it means it's something you take seriously, expecting returns in future, and which means you will put all the necessary monitoring checks and balances to ensure that the input is what you put in. There's an expected outcome from that investment that you're making. But what we have observed over the years is that Nigeria continues to expand building blocks and puts, we measure progress by the amount of people who are going into these classrooms, you know, that's enrollment levels, and not the quality of the education that we're giving these children over time. So what you have in essence is that governors and presidents are always telling you that the enrollment levels are climbing up, whereas the quality of the education is depreciating. And there's another funny thing that I have noticed again over time is when we talk about the quality of education, of the number of children out of school in Nigeria, there seems to be a focus on northern Nigeria. Yes, the numbers are huge in northern Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Largely because of the crisis in Adamawa, Borno, and in Yobe. But it's a national crisis, because even in the southwest or in the southeast or in the south-south, even though you have a number more people going to schools in those regions, the quality is also abysmal.
So what makes the quality of education?
A whole lot of things comes into play when you talk about the quality of education. The first thing that any country has to take into cognizance is you need to have a national vision for your education. What do you want your citizens to compete at in a global stage? And so, because there's always a correlation between the quality of the educational system of a country and the performance in the country, whether you, on economic terms, on science and technology, there's always a correlation. So Singapore is not an exceptional country, or is not doing as well as it's doing because of Lee Kuan Yew. It's doing as well as it's doing because Lee Kuan Yew made critical investment in the education of the people of his country, and that's why the Singaporeans have one of the best educational systems in the world. And you can see the output on its citizens. That's why China had the deliberate policy to send young people to Western countries to study engineering. And that's why you're seeing them with the remarkable progress they've had in the last 40 years. So except their deliberate steps to put in quality education into young people over time, over a period of time, you're not going to have any output. The problem is, for politicians, there is no immediate benefit for investing in education. It's an unseen, it's an intangible. So if you make quality investment in education, nobody's going to see. It's not like roads and bridges.
But that is putting the nation at a risk, the future of the nation.
Yeah. Exactly my point, because it's not like roads and bridges. And he's at risk. I mean, governors have lost election because they wanted to increase the quality of education in their school. Kaidi Farm is a case in point. So I think as a nation, we need to sit back and ask ourselves the fundamental question: how do we want to compete in the 21st century? When we answer that question, we'll know the kind of education we want to give our citizens.
All right. Ayodele Adio, we'll leave it here now. Thank you for your time on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you. It's more than the population of Togo. It's more than the population of Benin. So it's like an entire country is without education. And that's a real disaster in waiting. So we need to start now and start very quickly. There's a universal education, United-based education policy. Whether or not that's been adhered to is a different kettle of fish.
We have to leave it here.
Thank you very much.
Ayodele Adio, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons on topics discussed today are their views and have no connection with TVC News.
Thanks for watching. You can keep up with us on social media using the hashtag TVC Breakfast.
Well, let's do this again tomorrow. Until then,
have a great day. Bye.